10 reasons why men break up with their mistresses. In this video, we will talk about the reasons that might make a man decide to break up with a mistress. So, let's go through everything step by step. And the first reason is, of course, fear. A man is a living person. He experiences all emotions, and he is also afraid. He has a lot of fear in his mind. At first, for example, when starting a relationship with a mistress, certain hormones are at play, and there is a desire to get something from the mistress that might be lacking at home. But over time, more fears are born in his mind, and he is afraid of losing what he has. In the best case, for him, he understands that it would be good to keep both his wife and his mistress, but he realizes that everything might soon be revealed. If he loves his wife, and she meets many of his criteria, he does not want to lose his family. Then he will be afraid, and this fear will weigh on him. What might a man fear? These are material risks. For example, he understands that his wife will find out there will be a divorce. There might be some sort of property division, and so on. And the man realizes that he can lose a lot, and this scares him. Next are the reputational risks. This, of course, mostly concerns people who hold high positions, meaning for them. For example, it is important that the family is a full cup, that is, for creating a certain image, for creating a certain persona. That is, a man might fear losing his wife. Another fear is the understanding that when children find out that their father is betraying their mother and cheating, they might refuse to communicate with him. And for a man, this is also important, and this is also a kind of fear that can be in a man's mind. Next, a realization of hidden threats from the mistress. That is, if the wife is a trusted person, trusted over the years, meaning they have lived together for a certain period of time. They have, for example, children together. He knows how she behaves in everyday life, how she behaves in general. Then he knows nothing about the mistress. He only knows about spending time with her, for example, evenings and other moments that the mistress has told him about. He doesn't understand how to live with her. There can be various threats from the mistress. That is, the mistress might, for example, cheat in the future as well. The mistress might not be like the wife. Decent, good, domestic, and so on. A mistress might, for example, tell everything to the wife, and a man fears this as well. Next, shock. If, for example, one of this man's friends is currently going through a divorce because his wife found out about the mistress, and the man hears all the details, these details simply scare him. Or the behavior of the mistress at the moment when the wife found out, or how the mistress behaved, scares him. When a man hears such stories, he somewhat projects them onto himself and thinks that it might happen to him too. Out of a state of fear, a man might decide to leave the mistress, break up, and end all relationships in order to live peacefully. In a pair of lovers, the chemistry can disappear. The relationship with a mistress is just like any other relationship, and it also develops. If at first there is some passion, adrenaline, and intense emotions, over time the relationship takes on a more standard appearance. Small problems start to appear, such as when will you get a divorce? When will you leave your wife? You spend too little time with me, and so on. Problems still start to arise. The chemistry begins to fade, and at this moment, the wife might start showing some signs of attention. For example, the wife has become more attractive. The wife has started behaving differently, and the man realizes that he finds it more interesting, comfortable, and happier with his wife. With the mistress, everything is simple. If the chemistry is gone, he might decide to leave the mistress. Moving on. Pressure. And the man gets tired of this immense pressure because the mistress is pressuring him, as she does not want to remain in the status of a mistress for a long time, except for those mistresses who are satisfied with everything. But for the most part, the mistress wants to become the legal wife, meaning she does not want to play a secondary role. And the man initially endures pressure from the mistress, thinking that he is getting something from her, so he decides to tolerate it. Then the pressure starts from the wife. The wife begins to ask, "Where have you been? Why were you late? Why couldn't I reach you?" He starts to feel that. For example, his wife is already suspicious of something, and that is already pressure. the man finds himself caught between a rock and a hard place. Perhaps friends find out about the situation and start saying, "Are you out of your mind? You have such a wonderful life. You could lose her." For example, "Why are you doing this? Why did you do that?" Or maybe your sister will find out, or someone from close relatives. And the man realizes that he can no longer cope with this pressure and thinks, is it worth it? And at that moment, he might decide to break up with his mistress. Next, financial support for the mistress. At some point, a man can be very generous towards his mistress, but everything gradually starts to come to an end. At some point, the man realizes that he needs to spend more on his children. For example, the children have grown up, are entering an institute, or something else. More money is needed. More money is spent on the family, and the mistress also demands something for herself, wants some gifts, attention, and the man, starting to analyze his expenses, realizes that the mistress is a very costly part, a huge expense item, and that this money could be directed, for example, to the family. Or perhaps a difficult situation has occurred where the man needs money, but the mistress demands that her man continue to support her, keep giving gifts, and continue to invest financially, and at this moment, the man might think that it is too expensive for him. Next, resentment towards the mistress. This can also happen. The man found out that the mistress has someone else. In other words, there can be different situations. Either she behaved differently somewhere, or he arranged a meeting with her, and she treated it frivolously and didn't show up, and so on. In other words, a man can get upset over anything. And this resentment can be such a trigger for making the decision, like, what am I doing with this woman? Well, why? Why? After all, I could lose my family. Even a small grievance can turn everything upside down, leading a man to decide to break up with his mistress. Moving on, he realized the futility of living together with his mistress. This is a situation where the man may have already left his wife and started living with his mistress. And now it's no longer pleasant meetings, fireworks, and emotions. Now the mistress starts behaving more and more like a wife, and possibly even worse. In other words, the man realizes that the basic needs that the wife fulfilled are not being met by the mistress. He wants to eat, he walks around untidy, and so on. And he begins to compare and think that he made the wrong choice, that the decision to live with his mistress was a mistaken one. And often men, after living with a mistress for some time, start asking to come back, begging for forgiveness from their wife, realizing what they have lost. Moving on, the mistress lost her feminine appeal, and this can also happen when living together. Once again, the man left his wife for the mistress. He let the beauty, but the beauty wasn't really 24/7. She was a beauty when she was constantly meeting him. Hairstyle, makeup, a shocking robe, and so on. And now she also walks around, for example, puts on a mask. Now she is disheveled in the morning, and so on. And he realizes that it's the same life here, the same life. She isn't a beauty 24/7, and perhaps the mistress has stopped attracting him as well. When we possess something, many people start to devalue it, and even having a beautiful mistress, over time her beauty begins to fade. And other aspects, such as character traits and inner qualities, start to be noticed. And this can also play a huge role in the man's decision to leave the mistress. Moving on, the man has either aged or fallen ill, and he no longer needs as many intimate relationships. He understands that there is no point in continuing the relationship and decides to break up next. Conscience. This is something that can, let's say, weigh on the conscience of such men. That is, at some point he realizes that he is betraying his wife, and his wife is, in fact, a good woman, and he feels guilty towards her. At some point, he realizes that he is taking time away from his mistress. She is losing her prime years, an opportunity to build a family, and his conscience, let's say, can play both ways. He becomes very ashamed and realizes that he, for example, is deceiving his mistress by saying that he will leave his wife someday, but he doesn't actually want to do that. At this moment, he may decide to break up with the mistress. And lastly, the parents. When the parents find out about the infidelities, meaning the wife might not know yet, but the parents somehow found out, someone told them. And naturally, the parents are on the side of the woman who is raising their grandchildren and has been with their son for a long time. Even if they did not treat their daughter-in-law very well, understanding that everything could fall apart now, they might take the wife's side and defend her. That is, once again, to create such pressure that it will be difficult for the man, possibly even unbearable for him. Pressure from parents, acquaintances, friends, and internal pressure, these inner torments can lead to The realization and understanding that all of this is unnecessary, that it is necessary to break these relationships, to break this triangle in order to finally live peacefully. That's all for this video. This was Elisa Vardomskaya. I hope for your likes and subscriptions. Write in the comments what you would like to discuss in my new videos. Don't forget to hit the bell, and goodbye everyone.